The greatest leaders are not surrounded by friends, nor protected by loyalty. They stand alone, because only in solitude can one see the truth without distortion. The problem is simple: most men seek comfort in company, while the truly powerful must embrace isolation, or be destroyed by the very hands they trust. History whispers a cruel lesson: power is not shared, it is seized and guarded in silence. Those who stand at the summit find no equal beside them, only shadows and sycophants. To rule is to be alone, for every companion is a potential rival, every ally a seed of betrayal. The world admires the throne, but it never speaks of the solitude it demands. In this discourse, we strip away the illusions of companionship and uncover why the path of the strongest leaders is marked by silence, suspicion, and deliberate distance. Power does not sharpen its edge in crowds. It hardens in silence. It matures in solitude. Ask yourself, when you are surrounded by voices, do you hear truth, or only the echo of what others want you to believe? A ruler who drowns in counsel loses the ability to think for himself. And yet, men crave company, because solitude forces them to confront the reality they spend their lives avoiding. The strongest leaders do the opposite. They weaponize solitude. They strip away the illusions created by flattery, loyalty, and friendship, and they stand naked before reality. This is clarity, and clarity is power. Consider Julius Caesar. He sat among senators who praised him, but each word was poisoned. He ignored the silence of solitude, and for that, he was stabbed not by his enemies, but by those he called allies. Had he kept his distance, had he not trusted the company of men who smiled as they plotted, perhaps Rome's history would have been rewritten. Do you see the danger? When you rely on others for perspective, you inherit their blindness. When you crave their approval, you become their prisoner. It is solitude that frees you from this cage. Look at the generals who command from the front lines. The noise of their men, the prayers, the fears, all of it distorts judgment. But the commander who retreats to his tent alone, staring into maps by candlelight, discovers what the mob cannot: the truth hidden beneath noise. That truth, born in silence, is what leads armies to victory. Psychology confirms what history has long revealed. When you are surrounded, your mind conforms. It bends. It shapes itself to avoid rejection. Crowds do not make you sharper, they dull you. They tempt you to think in harmony rather than precision. But isolation creates resistance. It breeds independence of thought. And independence is the foundation of dominance. Ask yourself again, how many rulers fell because they listened to the wrong voice? How many kings believed their friends, their priests, their mistresses, until the dagger entered their ribs? The fall of power is not always from open war. Often, it is from whispers at the banquet table. The wise leader avoids this by pulling back, by making solitude his fortress. He knows that every smile hides an agenda, every promise carries a price. Better to see the world without distortion than to be blinded by the comfort of companionship. Do not mistake solitude for weakness. It is not retreat, it is strategy. It is the sharpening of the blade before the strike. It is the hunter waiting in silence while the prey reveals itself. Alexander the Great conquered the known world, yet in his tent he was often alone, writing letters, planning campaigns, guarding his thoughts. He knew what few ever learned: the moment you let others define your vision, you no longer lead, you follow. Modern life hides the same trap. The leader of a corporation, the head of a movement, even the ruler of a household, each is tempted to seek approval, to chase the noise of validation. But approval corrupts. It lures you into decisions that serve the crowd, not your ambition. If you cannot endure solitude, you will never endure power. So reflect: who do you allow into your inner circle? How many of your decisions are truly your own, unshaped by persuasion? If the answer unsettles you, then you are already compromised. Isolation is not about rejecting all men. It is about controlling distance. You draw close only when it serves you, and you withdraw when clarity demands it. A ruler who walks among the crowd too long forgets he is separate from them. He forgets he is meant to rule, not to blend. Remember this: solitude strips away illusion. It exposes motives. It forces you to look upon the world without the mask others place upon it. And once you see clearly, no one can deceive you, no one can sway you, no one can lead you astray. But clarity comes at a cost. It is a lonely crown. Few dare to wear it, for it demands a strength that frightens ordinary men. The question is, will you? Will you embrace the silence, the suspicion, the distance, in order to see what others cannot? Or will you cling to the comfort of voices until those very voices drag you into ruin? The choice separates the rulers from the ruled. And in the next lesson, we will uncover the darker truth. Why trust itself is the first weakness that destroys the powerful. Power bends not to trust, but to suspicion. And yet, men are desperate to believe in loyalty. They cling to the illusion that trust can bind others to them. It cannot. Understand, this trust is not loyalty, it is convenience. Men remain faithful only as long as it serves their interest. The moment profit shifts, their allegiance dissolves. Ask yourself, who do you truly trust? And more importantly, how many of those you trust would abandon you if betrayal offered them more? If the answer unsettles you, then you already know the truth. Trust is not a bond, but a gamble. History drips with the blood of leaders who gambled wrong. Consider the fall of Richard II of England. He believed his nobles bound to him by loyalty. Yet when Henry Bolingbroke returned to claim the crown, those same nobles shifted allegiance without hesitation. Why? Because their loyalty was never to the man. It was to advantage. The king who trusted became the king who lost everything. Even in smaller realms, the same rule applies. A commander trusts his soldiers, but soldiers fight not for him, but for gold, for plunder, for survival. Withdraw their reward, and watch how swiftly their loyalty withers. The leader who mistakes their presence for devotion walks blind into ruin. Trust, then, is the first weakness. It opens the gates to manipulation. It hands your enemies a key to your defenses. The very moment you depend on another, you surrender a portion of control. Think of the merchant who entrusts his fortune to a partner. The partner smiles, speaks of loyalty, and yet, when the balance of profit tilts, betrayal becomes inevitable. Men are loyal only to their own gain. The rest is theater. Do you see the danger? When you trust, you lower your guard, you expose your blind spot, and the one who studies you, who waits with patience, will strike precisely there. Even psychology affirms this brutal reality. Trust alters the mind, it lulls you into complacency. It silences suspicion, and suspicion is the only weapon that keeps betrayal in check. The trusted man becomes invisible to your scrutiny. And it is always the invisible dagger that kills. Why do people crave trust? Because trust is comfortable. It feels safe. But comfort is the death of power. The strongest leaders understand this. They replace trust with control, loyalty with fear, and bonds with leverage. Consider the Borgias of Renaissance Italy. They thrived not by trusting, but by binding men through debt, favors, and secrets. A man indebted to you cannot betray you without losing more than he gains. A man who fears you will think twice before defecting. This is not trust, it is architecture, the deliberate construction of dependence. So I ask you, do you build your relationships on blind faith or on binding leverage? If tomorrow your closest ally received a better offer, would they still stand beside you, or would they sell you to your enemies for the right price? Trust is a currency only fools spend freely. The wise ruler hoards suspicion. He tests, he verifies, he manipulates. He never assumes loyalty, he engineers it. Think of modern politics. How many careers collapse because a leader, trusted, a confidant, only to be betrayed by a leak, a recording, a scandal? The lesson never changes. Every betrayal begins with trust. Remove trust, and betrayal loses its teeth. Does this mean you must isolate yourself completely? No. It means you treat loyalty as a mask, not a foundation. You assume every man wears two faces, one for you and one for himself. And you prepare for both. The strongest leaders expect betrayal, and thus they are never surprised when it comes. The weakest leaders believe in loyalty, and they are destroyed by it. So remember this: every time you extend trust, you hand someone the weapon that can cut you down. The only question is when they will choose to use it. Better, then, to keep the weapon in your own hands. Better to make men fear to strike than to pray they never will. This is the dark truth of power. Trust is to expose weakness, and weakness invites ruin. But what happens when a leader abandons trust altogether? What replaces it, and how does he rule without bonds of affection? The answer lies in the next truth: the art of control through detachment. Power thrives not in closeness, but in distance. The leader who binds himself emotionally to others becomes predictable, and predictability is the first step to defeat. Do you know why most men fail when they gain authority? Because they carry their heart into the throne room. They let affection, loyalty, and friendship soften their judgment. They believe ruling is about connection, when in truth, ruling is about control. Detachment is the weapon that separates the ruler from the ruled. It allows him to command without being commanded in return. Consider Napoleon Bonaparte, brilliant on the battlefield, feared by kings, admired by his soldiers. But in private, he allowed his passions, his desires, even his love for Josephine, to sway his focus. His enemies exploited his moments of attachment, and the empire he built crumbled under the weight of sentiment. The man who mastered Europe could not master himself. Do you see the danger? Attachment hands others the strings to your mind. Detachment cuts them away. In psychology, we know emotional bonds create patterns. When you care too deeply, you react predictably. You grow desperate to protect, desperate to please, desperate to preserve, and desperation is leverage. It makes you vulnerable to manipulation, blackmail, or betrayal. Think of the ruler who shows affection too openly. Every advisor, every soldier, every mistress learns how to pull at that affection. One by one, they shape his will until his will is no longer his own. He rules in name, but in truth, he is ruled. But imagine the opposite. Imagine a leader who stands apart. He speaks but reveals little. He smiles but never too long. He listens but his silence cannot be interpreted. Such a man is unreadable. And what cannot be read cannot be controlled. Detachment does not mean cruelty. It means calculation. It means appearing to care, while never letting care dictate your choices. It is the art of showing warmth without ever surrendering to it. Your allies feel valued, your enemies feel uncertain, but you remain untouched inside. The Roman Emperor Tiberius understood this. He withdrew from the Senate, spoke little, and revealed nothing of his true intentions. His silence bred fear, because no one could predict his mind. While others sought approval, he remained distant, and that distance became dominance. Ask yourself, are you too visible? Do others know how to move you, how to provoke you, how to win your favor? If they do, you are not in control. They are. Detachment makes you the master of perception. You become the one who decides when to reveal, when to conceal, when to appear merciful, and when to strike. Every gesture becomes deliberate, every silence a weapon. And because you are not bound emotionally, you can make decisions others could never bear. This is why detachment terrifies people. They cannot predict you. They cannot sway you. They cannot own you. You are free from the chains of sentiment. Consider the modern world. In business, the executive who grows too close to his employees eventually sacrifices profit for approval. The politician who relies on affection loses the ruthlessness needed to survive scandal. The parent who cannot detach from emotion fails to discipline with consistency. Everywhere you look, attachment erodes authority. So how do you practice detachment? You begin by mastering silence. Speak less than others expect. Do not rush to explain yourself. Let ambiguity become your ally. Second, you control your expressions. Never let anger, affection, or fear escape without intention. The moment others see your true emotions, they know how to play them. Third, you act with strategy, not impulse. Before every decision, ask yourself, is this choice born from strength or from attachment? If it is the latter, you already know it is weakness. Detachment does not remove humanity. It transforms it into a mask you wear at will. You decide when to show warmth, when to display wrath, when to appear generous, when to remain cold. But unlike others, you are never ruled by these displays. You use them as a craftsman uses tools. Remember this, the one who stands apart commands more respect than the one who clings. The detached leader is untouchable because no one holds his strings. He chooses when to connect and when to retreat. He commands without ever being commanded. But there is a darker truth still. If detachment makes you unreadable, then what emotion should you replace attachment with? What force binds men more tightly than love and controls them more completely than friendship? The answer is fear. And in the next lesson, you will see why fear, not affection, cements true power. Power does not rest on friendship. It rests on fear. Men love at their convenience. They fear at yours. Friendship is fragile, shaped by moods, by changing interests, by fleeting emotions. Fear is steady. Fear endures. Fear obeys. Ask yourself, would you rather be loved, or would you rather be obeyed? Every weak ruler answers love. Every strong ruler knows the truth. Love is a gift, but fear is insurance. Look to history. Consider Caesar Borgia, a man both admired and despised. He inspired fear in his allies and enemies alike. His cruelty in Romagna was infamous, yet it brought peace where chaos once reigned. Why? Because men feared the consequences of disobedience more than they longed for affection. His reign was not secured by friendship, it was secured by terror. Now contrast this with Louis XVI of France, a king who wished to be loved by his people, who sought harmony over fear. He gave concessions, he tried to please, he smiled where he should have ruled with iron. And what was his reward? The guillotine. A king beloved until the moment affection was no longer useful. When love faded, his head rolled. Do you see? Friendship and affection are unreliable currencies. They vanish the moment they cost too much. But fear remains even when profit is gone. Psychology explains this harsh truth. Human beings pursue pleasure, but they avoid pain with greater urgency. The threat of loss outweighs the promise of gain. This means a leader who relies on affection is building on sand, but the leader who builds on fear constructs his throne on stone. Do not mistake this for cruelty without purpose. Fear is not chaos, it is structure. It is the silent chain that keeps men aligned. Without it, affection dissolves into betrayal. With it, even betrayal hesitates. Think of the general on the battlefield. If his men march because they love him, they may falter when the slaughter grows heavy. But if they fear his discipline, if they know retreat will bring harsher punishment than the enemy's blade, they march forward with iron resolve. Fear drives where friendship fails. Even in your own life, you have seen this. The friend who adores you today may envy you tomorrow. The colleague who praises you in public may undercut you in private. Affection bends with circumstance. But fear leaves no room for such games. It anchors loyalty through dread of consequence. Ask yourself, who controls you more, the one you love or the one you fear? When love commands, you hesitate, you question, you weigh the bond. But when fear commands, you obey without pause. Fear does not negotiate, it dominates. This is why leaders who choose to be feared command greater security. The people may not adore them, but they dare not defy them. Fear silences treachery before it begins. It keeps rivals from overreaching, allies from defecting, and subordinates from testing the boundaries of power. But beware, fear must be measured. Excessive cruelty breeds rebellion, while measured fear breeds obedience. The wise leader strikes hard enough to be respected, but not so blindly that he becomes hated without purpose. For hatred is different from fear. Hatred breeds plots. Fear breeds obedience. The balance lies in discipline. You do not need to display the lash every day. You need only remind them it exists. The possibility of punishment is often stronger than punishment itself. This is the brilliance of fear. It governs even in silence. Consider Stalin, who ruled not through affection, but through an atmosphere of constant dread. His shadow was enough to silence opposition. Few dared to speak, fewer dared to act. His authority survived not because people loved him, because they knew the price of disobedience. And yet, how many leaders today make the fatal mistake of pursuing love? They want applause, validation, affection. They seek to be adored. And for a time they succeed. But affection evaporates at the first sign of weakness. Fear, however, lingers, even when strength falters, Remember this: love is a choice. Fear is not. Love can be withdrawn. Fear cannot be unlearned. So which do you prefer? To gamble on the shifting tides of affection, or to command through the certainty of fear? The answer decides whether you will be obeyed or betrayed. But fear alone is not enough. To wield fear with true mastery, you must understand the power of silence, the hidden crown that shields strategy from betrayal. And that we will uncover next. Power does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it says nothing at all. The greatest leaders understand that silence is not emptiness. It is armor. It is strategy. It is the crown that protects the mind from betrayal. Ask yourself, how often do you reveal your thoughts too quickly? How often do you explain, defend, or confess? Only to realize your words have armed another against you. Every truth you speak becomes a weapon in someone else's hands. Every secret you reveal shortens your own reign. Silence denies this. It withholds. It confuses. It forces others to guess. And in their guessing, they expose themselves while you remain concealed. Consider the Venetian Republic. For centuries, it thrived not because it was stronger than its neighbors, but because it was more secretive. Decisions of state were cloaked in mystery. The Doge himself was bound by layers of silence, forbidden to act alone, bound to the shadows of council secrecy. The result? A republic feared and respected, because no one beyond its walls truly knew its plans. Contrast this with rulers undone by their own tongues. Charles I of England revealed his intentions too often, allowing Parliament to anticipate and undermine him. His words betrayed him long before the executioner's blade did. The king who spoke too much lost not only his throne, but his head. Do you see the lesson? The more you speak, the more predictable you become. The less you reveal, the more formidable you appear. Psychology supports this ancient wisdom. The unknown breeds fear. The ambiguous breeds fascination. When people cannot read you, they project power upon you. They imagine you know more than you do, that you see further than they can. Silence magnifies your presence. It turns mystery into authority. Think of the interrogator who speaks little. The prisoner trembles, filling the silence with nervous confessions. The words spill not from force, but from discomfort. The quiet observer extracts truths without ever revealing his own. This same tactic works in courtrooms, in boardrooms, in bedrooms. Silence unsettles because men crave certainty. When you refuse to give it, they bend themselves into knots trying to interpret you, and in their desperation to read your silence, they expose their fears, their weaknesses, their ambitions. Remember, the man who speaks often is easy to read, easy to play, easy to destroy. But the man of silence cannot be mapped. He becomes a shadow on the wall, present but untouchable. Alexander Hamilton once warned, "Those who stand for nothing fall for anything. Yet those who speak of everything fall even faster." The true ruler speaks when it matters and remains silent when it does not. He measures words as coins, each one carrying weight, each one paid with intent. Even in your life, this principle holds. The colleague who says little in meetings appears wiser, even when he knows no more than others. The partner who keeps their thoughts hidden is seen as mysterious, even alluring. Silence adds gravity to presence. It forces others to lean in, but silence is not simply absence. It is control. It lets you decide what others know and when they know it. It buys you time to study their moves while concealing your own. It turns conversations into traps, where others reveal everything while you reveal nothing. Ask yourself, how many battles could you have won if you had spoken less? How many betrayals could you have avoided if you had guarded your secrets? How many times have you armed your rivals by sharing what they had no right to know? The crown of silence is not easy to wear. It demands restraint. It demands patience. It demands the strength to endure the discomfort of holding back when every instinct tells you to speak. But once mastered, it becomes your greatest shield. For men cannot attack what they do not see. They cannot betray what they do not know. They cannot strike a plan that exists only within your mind. So remember this: your words are your kingdom. Spend them carelessly, and your kingdom shrinks. Guard them fiercely, and your kingdom endures. The ruler who wears the crown of silence does not need to shout to be feared. He does not need to explain to be obeyed. His silence alone commands respect, for it leaves the world uncertain, guessing, vulnerable. But silence is not the end of power. It is only the foundation. For what use is silence if you do not wield it to shape destiny itself? The true question is this: once you master solitude, suspicion, detachment, fear, and silence, how do you use them all to carve a throne that can never be toppled? That, my listener, is where the doctrine of power truly begins. Power is not taken by force alone. It is taken in silence. It is taken in the unseen manipulations, the hidden levers, the quiet suspicions. The strongest leaders rule not by declaring control, but by controlling without being noticed. They let others believe they are free, even as every choice is guided, every move anticipated, every outcome engineered. Is this not the highest form of mastery? To make men obey without realizing they are obeying. To make them follow willingly, while imagining the path was their own. Remember, visibility is weakness. Secrecy is strength. When others cannot see the strings, they can never cut them. So, ask yourself, are you shaping the world, or is the world shaping you? If this discourse has unsettled you, good. That means you are thinking like a ruler. Now, declare your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe for more strategies forged in darkness. And share this with those who still cling to illusions, before they become your rivals. The game of power never ends, only the players change.